My journey didn't kick off like I wanted it to. I was headed to Minneapolis for a Thursday through Friday convention back in the day. My wife Martha would usually take time off to create good memories before my trips, but this time, she just gave me a quick goodbye kiss on her way to work. I'm Dennis Badger, a 49-year-old man who has been married to Martha for 24 years, and we have 2 kids, Ross, 22, and Amelia, 20. I left for the airport around 3 p.m. for my 6 p.m. flight. I'm the type who gets to the airport super early to avoid any stress about missing my flight. Everything was smooth until a snowstorm in Minnesota delayed the incoming plane. We finally got on the plane, but about 30 minutes in, I realized we were turning around because of the storm. So back at the airport, I had to scramble to book another flight for the next morning. I managed to snag one of the last seats. I called my Minneapolis contact and my boss to let them know about the delay. When I tried calling Martha, though, she didn't answer. So, last night didn't go as planned. It was past 8 p.m. when I got home, and the place was dark. Martha's car was nowhere in sight. I figured she stayed late at work or went out to eat. With our youngest at college, the house has been feeling kind of empty. I left my bags in the car and went inside, only to hear the TV on in the living room. Weird. That meant Martha must have been home after work because I remembered the TV was off when I left in the morning. I turned it off and looked around, but Martha was nowhere. I called her cell, and she picked up after a few rings. "Hi, honey," as she said, recognizing my number. I asked her where she was, just a regular question, nothing nosy. Where else, dummy?" "I'm at home watching my soaps," as she said, and I felt like I'd been doused with cold water. She asked about my flight, thinking I was at the hotel. I was confused and tired from the travel mess. I was looking forward to spending some extra time at home with her, but that call threw me off. Her lying to me hit me hard. Why would she need to lie if she was just working late or out with friends? I was so thrown off, I just told her I had to go and hung up. She called back right away, but I turned off my phone. I needed some space to figure things out. Alone on the couch, I was in a daze, trying to make sense of why Martha would lie. Maybe she's planning a surprise. I remembered how I spun a web of lies 4 years ago for our 20th anniversary cruise. I even roped in her boss and her parents to keep the secret. All those lies led to a great surprise, a cruise that started as a supposed weekend in Miami. But now, I couldn't think of any special occasion coming up. My birthday and our 25th anniversary were still 10 months away. A nagging thought kept creeping in, but I pushed it away. It couldn't be that. Not us. I decided to call our daughter Amelia, thinking she might know about any surprise Martha was planning. "Hey, Daddy. How are you?" Amelia answered cheerfully. I asked her if she knew anything about a surprise from Martha. Amelia seemed clueless. "No, Daddy, nothing at all. Why do you ask?" I tried to play it off, suggesting maybe Martha was planning something for my 50th birthday, which we had just celebrated a month ago. Amelia's response confirmed there was no surprise. Hanging up, I was back to square one. Why would Martha lie? Then it hit me. Maybe it's about her promotion. She'd been staying late at work a lot, aiming for that promotion. But she knew how I felt about our time together. I had even turned down a promotion myself a few months before our 20th anniversary to spend more time with her and the kids. I sat there, lost in thought, wondering if her quest for a promotion was worth the lost time we could have spent together. About 5 years ago, I had a big career opportunity, a chance to be the vice president of finance at my company. The job sounded great, but it came with a lot of travel to Chicago for meetings and plant tours across the country. I was excited at first, but Martha made me think twice. My would-be predecessor got divorced 2 years after he took that job. Rich but alone and unhappy. Our kids still had a couple of years of high school left, and they needed us both. After a week of deep talks, I realized that my family was more important than any job, so I said no to the promotion. Lately though, Martha has been gunning for her own promotion, and it's been tough. The kids are in college now, so it's different for her. Her job would mean some travel, but not enough to turn our lives upside down. We even thought we could coordinate our travel schedules. But the real issue was her overtime. She was always working late. She spent weekends at the office, and when she was home, she was too tired for anything. Even our love life took a hit. It's been weeks, maybe a month, since we were intimate. So when Martha told me she was home watching TV, I thought maybe she just didn't want to hear me complain about her working late. I got it. I travel too, and some overtime is okay. But I needed to know the truth. It was time to find out for myself. Grabbing my phone, I called Martha's direct line at T-Bolt Advertising, only to be greeted by Jake Turnbull, her colleague. I was caught off guard. Jake and Martha worked in different areas, so I hadn't expected him to answer her phone. But Jake's a straight shooter, he'd tell me if Martha was around. Hi Jake. Dennis here, I said. Jake replied with a simple hi Dennis. What's up? His next words threw me for a loop. He thought Martha and I were on vacation. Vacation? That was news to me. I played it off like I'd hit the wrong speed dial and apologized for bothering him. Jake casually mentioned that Martha owed him lunch for covering her work and said she'd be back Monday. It was after 9 p.m., and he was still at work. So Martha wasn't at work, and she was supposedly off for the rest of the week. My mind started racing with worry and suspicion. Where could she be, and what was she up to? A horrible thought hit me, one I didn't want to entertain. Could Martha be with her sister Olivia? Olivia and I had fallen out years ago. We used to be close, spending time together, looking after each other's kids, hosting family events, even vacationing together. But that all changed after one day when I came home with a terrible headache, took some Tylenol, and lay down on the couch. About half an hour after I laid down with my headache, Martha and her sister Olivia came back from their shopping trip. They were so caught up in their conversation, they didn't even notice me lying there. I overheard them talking about some new guy at the grocery store. Olivia was boasting about an affair with him right there in her van. My wife seemed shocked, warning Olivia she could lose her husband over her cheating. Olivia just brushed it off, saying she was careful. Then they left to pick up the kids. I was stuck there, not sure what to do. I've always been the kind of guy who believes in being honest and upfront, but this was a tough spot. Mike, Olivia's husband, is a great guy, and knowing about his wife's cheating would crush him. I was sure he'd throw her out if he found out. Did I really want to be the one to drop that bomb and ruin their marriage? Facing a moral dilemma, I was torn about how to handle the discovery of Olivia's infidelity. Ultimately, I left the decision to Martha, not wanting to be the instigator of family strife. That night, I sought Martha's advice on the issue. I presented it as a hypothetical situation, mentioning someone close to us cheating. Martha's initial response was cautious, suggesting the response might depend on the circumstances. I then made the scenario more specific, hinting it was Mike, Martha's brother-in-law. Martha's reaction was immediate and fiery. She was ready to confront Olivia herself, but I took the responsibility upon myself, wanting to handle it with some discretion. I called Mike and broke the news, telling him about Olivia's betrayal. Mike's silence on the phone was heartbreaking. After confirming it was indeed Olivia, I expressed our support for him and his kids. Martha was visibly moved by my handling of the situation. She expressed her pride in me for having the courage to deliver such difficult news. We comforted each other, discussing the possibility of therapy for Olivia and Mike, though Martha seemed skeptical about its efficacy in this case. Our conversation was interrupted by an angry call from Olivia. She couldn't believe her sister had revealed her secret. I calmly explained that Martha and I believed in facing the truth. Olivia, now desperate and homeless, asked to stay with us, but we firmly refused, unwilling to offer shelter to someone who betrayed their spouse. Martha's resolute response to Olivia reinforced our united front. We ended the call with a clear message: Olivia was out of our lives. That night, as we went to sleep, there was a sense of closure and solidarity between us. We had made a tough but necessary decision, standing together against betrayal and deceit. The next morning was chaos. Martha's dad called early, and from the sound of it, he wasn't happy. Martha was in tears after the call. She turned to me, asking, "Oh, what did you do, Dennis?" I reminded her that it was a joint decision. We had agreed that cheating warranted being cut off, and that extended to her sister Olivia. But Martha was upset because I had used Mike as an example of a cheater in our conversation, not Olivia. I pointed out the hypocrisy. Why was it okay for Olivia to cheat just because she was Martha's sister? I made it clear that I saw Olivia as a bad influence and didn't want her around our kids or in our home. 3 years have passed since then. Martha still met Olivia secretly, a topic we avoided at home. I wasn't surprised. Martha visited her sister while I was away, even if she felt the need to hide it from me. My resentment towards Olivia had lessened, especially since Mike had moved on and was about to remarry. Olivia was no longer a concern to me, and I was just glad she wasn't around. But it was time for Martha and me to have a serious talk about it. Keeping this under wraps wasn't healthy for either of us. I believed Martha felt guilty for lying, and honestly, I didn't care about Olivia anymore. It was better to clear the air and move on. I was abruptly awakened on the couch and realized it had been nothing but a bad dream. In the dream, I was delivering a speech at a convention, and individuals in the audience began asserting that they had been involved in affairs with Martha. It was absurd, but it shook me. Wiping the drool off my face, I checked the time: midnight. I had been asleep for over an hour. I wondered if Martha had come home while I was asleep. I got up and checked the bedroom, but there was no sign of her. Remembering she might be with her sister, I thought about calling, but then I realized I didn't have Olivia's number. That's when it hit me: I could use the Find My Phone app we installed last year when I lost my phone. I quickly pulled up the app, and to my surprise, it showed Martha's phone was at Mills Lake. That didn't make any sense. Olivia was broke; she couldn't afford a place at Mills Lake. Why would Martha be there? I was filled with a mix of confusion and concern, wondering what on earth was going on. So there I was, finding out that Martha's phone was at this super fancy place in Mills Lake. We're talking big bucks kind of estate, way pricier than our house. I pulled up Google Earth to get a closer look and saw her pin drop on this secluded estate surrounded by a high stone wall. What was Martha doing in a millionaire's hideout? I had to find out. It was about an hour's drive, and I was determined to get some answers. The whole drive over, I was mentally kicking myself for not wanting to believe the worst about Martha. Why hadn't I checked her phone's GPS right away instead of making excuses for her? By the time I got to Mills Lake, I was a bundle of nerves, still hoping there was a simple, innocent explanation for all this. When I reached the area where Martha's phone was, I found this massive gate blocking the entrance to the estate. No way was I going to drive up and ring the bell asking for my wife. I had to be more discreet. Plus, parking my car by the road was too risky. It would stick out like a sore thumb in this fancy neighborhood. I drove a little further and found a wooded trail where I could park without drawing attention. Climbing over the wall seemed like a bad idea, but then it hit me: the estate was by the lake. Maybe I could find a way to sneak in from the lakeside. I found a pedestrian path leading to the lake, thinking this could be my way in. There I was by the shore, trying to figure out which fancy mansion was the one where Martha's phone signal was coming from. I kept checking the GPS locator on my phone and finally pinpointed a large house with some lights still on upstairs. The first floor was dark, except for one window with its drapes open, spilling light outside. Finding a tree, I climbed up high enough to see inside. The first person I saw was Olivia, still attractive at 40, clad in a striking leather costume, her presence dominating the room. She was sipping champagne, looking out the window, seemingly at ease in this opulent setting. As I watched, a wealthy-looking older man in a white terrycloth robe, around 60, appeared. He was a stranger to me, moving with an air of authority. Olivia's interaction with him suggested she had found herself a well-off companion. I wasn't surprised to see Olivia in such a scenario, but my heart sank at the thought of Martha being tangled in this world. The older man grew intimate with Olivia. I felt I should look away, but I was frozen, a silent observer to a world so alien to my beliefs. I've always seen love and sex as intertwined in a committed relationship. What unfolded before me was devoid of such sentiments. Despite my disdain for Olivia's choices, I felt a pang of pity for her. As I contemplated leaving, the scene shifted, and my gaze was drawn deeper into the room. There was Martha, looking disheveled and drunk, her robe carelessly open. A man unknown to me approached her, his intentions clear. Seeing Martha like this, my belief in our marriage crumbled. A chill of realization swept over me. The room then took on the air of a dark theatrical performance. 5 men in cloaks and masks encircled Martha, each engaging in a dance that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. They moved to a rhythm set by eerie, ominous music, each step a grotesque parody of intimacy. In this macabre ballet, one of the masked men caught my attention. His movements, oddly familiar, sent a shiver of fear down my spine. It was a disturbing moment of recognition in a sea of strangeness. Martha, lost in this bizarre spectacle, seemed a world away. Olivia, her sister, now stood watching, her leather attire making her look like the conductor of this surreal orchestra, her keen eyes suggesting she was privy to secrets hidden from plain view. I needed to know who these masked men were, especially the one whose movements haunted me. Despite an overwhelming urge to flee, I was compelled to uncover the truth. Heart racing, I crept closer and began recording with my phone. The lens captured Martha and Olivia ensnared in this twisted scene, surrounded by the masked figures. It was like witnessing a dark, secret drama meant for an elite, hidden audience. Hidden in the shadows, I captured what I could, fighting an inner battle to intervene, but the idea of landing in jail for breaking and entering or assault quickly quashed that impulse. Yet, I remained a silent witness, my video the only evidence of this nightmarish reality. Once I had enough footage, I retreated, a ghost in the chaotic scene, my mind reeling, trying to process the images now seared into my memory. It was a pivotal moment, a point of no return. I limped back to my car, carrying a deep, searing hurt inside, the weight of a truth too heavy to bear. As I walked through the night back to my car, a whirlwind of emotions battled inside me. There was no more denial, just a profound sense of loss, an immense sadness, and a growing anger that I struggled to keep in check. I knew unleashing that anger wouldn't solve anything and could ruin my life even more. I could have driven straight home, packed up, and left Martha right then and there. With no kids at home and living in a no-fault state, a divorce would be pretty straightforward. Just split everything down the middle and walk away. But I needed something more, a bit of payback for the betrayal. So, I came up with a plan. I called Martha's cell, knowing full well she wouldn't pick up, and left a voicemail. Hey honey, I said, playing it cool. You didn't answer the house phone, so I'm trying your cell. Just wanted to say don't worry when you hear my keys at the door soon. My flight got crazy, diverted to Chicago because of a snowstorm, then sent back here. They're not sure when we'll land, but I should be home about 30 minutes after. See you shortly. I imagined Martha hearing the voicemail notification in the dead of night, curious and alarmed to get a message so late. It's not like me at all. She'd be reaching for her phone, maybe tipsy enough not to realize I couldn't use my cell on the plane. Panic would set in. She'd think she might just have enough time to get home before me. All the while, she'd be scrambling to get dressed, answering questions from Olivia and her lover, trying to cover her tracks. It was a simple act, but it gave me a small sense of satisfaction, setting the stage for her to feel a fraction of the turmoil and confusion I was experiencing. It was a small payback, but in that moment, it felt necessary. The ring of my phone jolted me out of my thoughts. I hadn't considered that Martha would call back to pin down my arrival time. Hi, honey. Sorry if I woke you, I said, keeping up the act. Martha's voice was cautious. It's all right. "Are you on your way home?" I told her I'd be there in about an hour, and she hung up quickly. Soon after, I saw her car speeding out of the estate's gate, heading toward the interstate. She was driving recklessly, nearly veering into a ditch. I realized then that this wasn't just about playing games with Martha. She was drunk and a danger to herself and others on the road. Despite my anger, I couldn't risk the safety of the mother of my children or that of innocent people. Acting quickly, I dialed 911 to report a drunk driver, describing Martha's car and its erratic behavior. The operator thanked me and assured me a patrol car would be dispatched. I followed at a safe distance. A few miles down, a highway patrol car, perched on an overpass, sprang into action as Martha's car approached and pulled her over. I drove past them and headed home. Sitting in the quiet of my house, the gravity of the situation hit me. In just one night, everything had changed. I had to confront the possibility of Martha getting hurt or worse and the impact it would have on our children. My decision to report her wasn't out of love, that had been overshadowed by the realization that we couldn't move forward together anymore. It was a sad, sobering moment marking the end of an era in my life. I turned off the ringer on the house phone and shut off my cell phone. I needed time alone with my thoughts. I just couldn't shake the reality that all my efforts to rationalize Martha's lie were futile when the most obvious explanation was staring me in the face. I uncorked a bottle of wine, trying to process everything. I had always thought our love would age like fine wine, reaching its peak over time. Instead, it had soured, turned to vinegar. The pain of Martha's betrayal was overwhelming. It wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was the realization that the love we shared was gone. That love had been my identity for 26 years, 24 of them as husband and wife. Could I even survive its loss? For a fleeting moment, the thought of ending it all crossed my mind. Planning a life without Martha seemed unfathomable. Our entire existence, every decision, revolved around our family. I wasn't one to mingle much with colleagues, aside from obligatory social events like the annual Christmas party. I always rushed home. In the last decade, I could count on one hand the times I went out with coworkers. But now, with the kids gone, it was supposed to be just Martha and me. And suddenly, it was just me, alone with my grief, with no one to love. Why did Martha do this? Why choose deception over a respectful end to our years together? When did her love for me stop? Was she just waiting for the kids to leave before ending things? I had seen our children's departure as a chance to focus more on Martha, on us, but she apparently saw it as an end. The image of that stranger with her kept playing in my mind. It was a stark reminder of how easily she betrayed our vows. We were dead as a couple, and all I had left was pain. But amidst the despair, that pain was a reminder of better times, of our children. I had to think about them, to hold on to something in the storm of loss and betrayal. In the depths of my despair that night, it was thoughts of my kids that pulled me through. My self-esteem was shattered, and I was trapped in a pit of grief. But the thought of Ross and Amelia, their futures, their marriages, their families, gave me something to cling to. It was a lifeline that sparked a bit of self-preservation within me. I realized I needed to leave, to get away from everything that was a reminder of my pain. I knew I would always cherish the memory of the Martha I loved, but that love was now tainted with the image of her betrayal. Staying wasn't an option. I had to get out of Dodge. Growing up in a modest family, I never needed much. The flashy stuff I owned now seemed meaningless. All I really needed were my clothes, my car, and my laptop. The more I thought about it, the clearer my path became. I would pack up and leave, disappear from the life that had been so cruelly shattered. Seeing Martha again would only reopen wounds that needed to heal. So I got up and began to pack clothes, a few personal belongings. It took just 30 minutes to gather my life into a few bags. I loaded everything into my car. It was almost 6 a.m. when I finished. Exhausted, I decided to take a nap in the car, confident Martha wouldn't be back from the drunk tank until mid-morning. This was it, the first step towards a new chapter, away from the pain and betrayal. The sound of my phone alarm at 9 a.m. pulled me from the deepest sleep I'd had in a while. I quickly arranged an emergency meeting with my lawyer, then took a shower. As I removed my wedding ring, a heavy sense of finality washed over me. I left it on the table beside my phone, a symbolic end to what had been. Before leaving, I felt the need to write a letter to Martha, not to reconcile, but to express the profound disappointment and betrayal I felt. In the letter, I was blunt. Martha, I should have seen this coming, seeing how your sister turned out. I'm leaving you. Your betrayal has hurt me more deeply than I thought possible. I'll always cherish the 24 years we had and our children, but I can't forgive this. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. I don't want to see or speak to you again. Denis. P.S. Duck you at the bank. By 10 a.m., I settled our joint credit card debts and closed them. I withdrew half of our savings in CDs, leaving enough in our joint account to cover 2 months of mortgage and utilities. With a cashier's check for $250,000 in hand, I removed my name from the account. By noon, I was at my workplace, surprising my boss who wasn't expecting me back so soon. He was even more taken aback when I announced my resignation and intention to move away. Our relationship was unique. He became my boss after I declined a promotion, and we had grown closer after he went through his own divorce. I had confided in him the real reason I didn't take the promotion, making our dynamic more like partners than boss and employee. Now, as I sat in his office explaining my decision to leave, it felt like closing yet another chapter in my life, a life that was rapidly changing, taking me into an uncertain but necessary new beginning. My boss's offer was unexpected. Listen, Dennis, I have a proposition for you, he said. I'll accept your resignation, but instead of finalizing your termination, I have a job for you in our optics division in Tucson. It pays less, but you can find affordable living there. We agreed to the arrangement, and he promised to spread the word that I had quit. This way, I could start anew without drawing attention to my personal crisis. Next, I visited my lawyer. I was direct. I wanted a divorce from Martha. He would serve her the papers and arrange for her to have power of attorney to sell the house, her share of our assets. My lawyer, a family friend, initially suggested counseling, but it was clear that my mind was made up. By midnight, I planned to be far away, starting over. By late afternoon, I was on the road. Exhaustion hit around 8 p.m., and I checked into a modest motel. Using a new throwaway phone, I called Ross. Hi Ross, it's Dad, I said. He was puzzled by the unfamiliar number. Save it. It's my new number, I told him. I then broke the news about catching Martha and my subsequent actions. There was a heavy silence when I explained that I had left Martha, cleared our accounts, resigned from my job, and was now heading south. Ross was shocked. Does Amelia know? He asked. I admitted she didn't. Everything had unfolded so quickly, he was the first to know. I promised to stay in touch, expressing my love before hanging up, overcome with fatigue and emotion. That night at a simple motel marked the first step in my journey of healing and moving forward, leaving behind a life that had once been everything to me. Calling Amelia was just as heart-wrenching as talking to Ross. Both of them were shocked to hear about their mother's actions. They remembered the turmoil caused by their Aunt Olivia's infidelity and couldn't fathom why their mother would follow the same path. Amelia, ever direct, asked, I wonder how long she had been doing this, Daddy. How long was it that we weren't enough for her anymore? I sighed. It doesn't matter, honey. I just wish she had been honest with me and asked for a divorce before cheating. Now, the duration or the reasons don't change anything. What matters is that I loved her, trusted her with my life, and she betrayed that trust. That's all that matters now. Amelia's voice quivered. Please don't talk like that, Daddy. Tell me you'll be okay. I'm all right now, very sad, but I'll get over it, especially if I can avoid contact with your mother, I reassured her. I'll let you know where I'm settling down. Then she asked if she could come stay with me after her school year ended. Her question brought tears to my eyes. I promised her she would always be welcome to live with me. Despite the pain and the upheaval, that phone call reaffirmed the enduring bond with my children, a silver lining in a dark cloud. Adjusting to life in Tucson was a mix of new beginnings and lingering ties to my past. The optics. Division was small, with about 30 employees, and the atmosphere was more familial than corporate. The team welcomed me warmly, and I quickly felt a part of the community. Within a month, I found myself settling into a nice condo, a fresh start in a new place. Nevertheless, moving on from my history with Martha proved to be a complex endeavor. My lawyer informed me that Martha was contesting the divorce, indicating her unwillingness to end our marriage, even if it meant potential financial ruin for both of us. Annoyed by this, I instructed my attorney to halt the divorce proceedings. I wanted to make it clear to Martha that I desired no further involvement with her, putting an acrimonious end to our years together. The situation involving my children was also fraught with complications. Amelia shared Martha's erratic reactions when she mentioned she'd be staying with me over the summer. Martha's behavior had become unpredictable, leading Amelia to dodge her calls for days. Ross faced similar challenges when he decided to split his summer between us. Despite my earnest wish to move forward, the children frequently updated me about Martha, making it difficult to completely sever the emotional ties. Surprisingly, I learned from my children that Martha was suffering from depression, much like I had been. This revelation was hard to fathom, considering her actions and their consequences. Her resistance to divorce appeared to be more about evading the reality of her deeds and the havoc it wreaked on our family. Martha, through the children, attempted to apologize for her behavior. According to them, it was the first time she had succumbed to her sister's influence and embarked on such a misadventure. Yet understanding her depression did not alter the fact that our marriage had come to an end. It was a peculiar kind of closure, recognizing that while I was crafting a new life in Tucson, Martha was grappling with the fallout of her decisions. The irony of life's unexpected twists, leaving us to navigate the aftermath as best we can, was not lost on me. However, the revelation that Martha had apologized for her actions, albeit indirectly through the kids, didn't significantly change my perspective. She had admitted to them about her deliberate betrayal, her profound shame, and the guilt that plagued her. On the night I left the voicemail, she had been with her fling, using alcohol to mask her shame and remorse. Martha seemed to hold on to the hope that expressing enough regret and professing her love might lead to reconciliation. This message was relayed to me by the kids, who understandably harbored aspirations of our reunion. Nevertheless, I couldn't bring myself to entertain the idea of speaking with her. The emotional and physical distance that had grown between us was insurmountable. The children found themselves in a difficult position, forced to choose between visiting her or me. Martha, in her desperation to locate me, persistently prodded them for information. Despite their reluctance, she somehow managed to uncover my whereabouts in Tucson nearly 3 years after I had left. One day, as I left work, I noticed her lurking near my office, leaving me baffled. I hadn't disclosed my living arrangements to the kids, so how did she manage to find me? Her determination to meet face-to-face was evident, but instead of changing my mind, her presence only reinforced my resolve. I had no desire to rekindle any connection with Martha, and I needed to make that unmistakably clear. Our paths had diverged, and there was no turning back. Quick thinking prompted me to slip out of the office via a side door, avoiding Martha's notice. I called up Louisa, a colleague and friend, and together we devised a plan to handle the situation. I intentionally allowed Martha to spot me so she would follow, leading her on a brief tour of the town before returning home. True to expectations, Martha was hot on my heels. I reached my condo, where Louisa, playing her role to perfection, was waiting with her toddler. Moments after I entered, Martha rang the doorbell, and Louisa answered, holding the toddler in her arms. I could see the shock on Martha's face when I appeared, cradling Louisa's daughter as if she were my own. Louisa played along brilliantly, instructing me to tend to our daughter. Facing Martha, I feigned surprise, thanking her for her betrayal and claiming it had led me to a better life here with my beautiful mistress and new family. Tears streamed down Martha's face as she whispered her apologies, expressing her remorse for her actions and declaring her enduring love. Despite the emotional weight of her words, I remained resolute in closing this chapter. I assured her that it was all water under the bridge and wished her a happy life, all the while looking at Tamarida, who was beaming in my arms. As Martha left, overwhelmed by her emotions, I closed the door and allowed myself a moment to release my own pent-up feelings. Louisa, recognizing the end of the charade, announced that she'd inform her husband, Horatio, that she and Tamarida would be heading home soon. With gratitude, I thanked Louisa for her assistance and extended an invitation for her family to join us for a barbecue on Saturday. It was a small comfort, but the act with Louisa had helped me bring closure to a painful chapter with Martha. Now, I could genuinely start moving forward, free from the lingering ghosts of the past. Final update: Martha signing the divorce papers marked a significant moment in my journey of moving forward. It brought relief by providing legal closure to a chapter in my life that had been filled with pain and turmoil. I am indeed making progress, though I'm doing it at my own pace. I have a few women in my life, one of whom I'm intimately close to, but I'm keeping these relationships light and non-committal for now. While the wounds of betrayal have healed considerably, I remain cautious in my approach to new relationships. Louisa, who was a tremendous help during the ordeal with Martha, has suggested setting me up with someone, and I'm starting to consider the idea. However, Martha's unexpected visit has led me to some introspection. I've always believed in facing issues head-on, but in Martha's case, I chose to walk away without a confrontation. Hearing her apologies made me wonder if direct closure at the time might have been better. Nevertheless, deep down, I'm confident that leaving as I did was the right decision. Confronting Martha back then could have resulted in a life filled with mistrust and unhappiness. Especially considering the depth of my love for her, it might have led to a cycle of forgiveness and doubt, eventually ending in an inevitable separation. Now, 3 years later, her apologies have unexpectedly provided me with the closure I didn't realize I needed. They have allowed me to finally release the lingering pain and look ahead to the future with renewed faith in love. As for the little white lie about having another daughter, I might someday disclose the truth to Martha, but then again I might not. After all, I don't owe her any further explanations or insights into my life. It's time to prioritize my own happiness and embrace the new beginnings that await.